Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping right here on my space today. I share some tutorial videos and pattern drafting right here on my channel. So in today's tutorial, I'll be quickly sharing with you all how to draft this beautiful bustier top with this stylish neckline and a basque effect in front. So there is everything likable about this particular top you see right here. I stumbled upon this on Instagram on Sandra Lawrence page or something, and what I like most about this particular dress is the uniqueness it has on the neckline. It has this joint at the center, including this basque effect in front. Like, it's totally different from the regular bustier tops we see with basque effect. So in this video, I'll be showing you all how to draft this, and without wasting much time, I'll just get started with today's tutorial. So guys, here are my sewing materials, and for this fabric is very stretchy and I have 1.5 years of it with my other sewing equipment. So right here I went ahead to draft out a basic bodice, but it's not yet complete, but I marked out the necessary lines that are required. So because this dress is an off shoulder, I subtracted 1 inch from my shoulder and I marked 6 inches. Now from my shoulder line, I got my chest line of 8 inches and I got my bust point of 9 inches. I got my half length of 17 inches. Normally my half length is 16 inches, but I added extra 1 inch to this to make it 17 inches. Now from the 17 inches, you can see the wideness from there all the way to my basque area. That part I labeled my basque area. So the difference there is 5 inches. So from my half length to my basque area, what I have there is 5 inches plus half of an inch for hemming or joining allowance. Okay, so that was all I did, and I'll proceed now to divide my nipple to nipple point of 7 inches into 2, and right there I have 3.5 inches, which you see me marking right here on all of these lines. So you can see that I already labeled all these lines, so without me actually mentioning it, you can read it out and see what each line here stands for. So after marking my nipple to nipple points on all of these lines, I use my stretch ruler to connect all of these points into a straight line. So after connecting, I'm simply going to come to my bust point. That is that line labeled my bust point. I'm going to go up by half of an inch and also come down by half of an inch from exactly that line labeled my bust point. So after this, I'll come to my dart leg. At that point on my back area, I'm going to come out and go out at both sides by half of an inch, and I'm going to connect it all the way up to the half of an inch I came down by from my bust point line, as you see me point right there. So I'm going to connect this all the way up to that point. So I'll be making use of a princess dart here, but not a fully cupped princess dart, okay, but I'll be making use of a princess dart. Okay, so the next I'm going to do is to mark out my neck depth. So from my shoulder, I went ahead to mark 5 inches. So this 5 inches is going to be my shoulder. So right here, after marking these 5 inches, all my actual measurements are going to be started from that pencil line I marked, and all of those lines I marked bad or I shaded are not going to be useful at this point. So from that point you see me right there, I'm going to connect all the way to that point I came up by on my bust point. So using this my curve rule, I'm going to connect all from that point all the way into that point which I showed you guys earlier. So you can see how I connected this. So if you're doing yours, also do exactly what I'm doing. So from that line which I connected, I'll come down by 1 inch, and that 1 inch I'm also going to use my curve rule and also connect it into that half of an inch I came up by from my bust point. I believe this is very clear to you all. So on that second curve which I made on exactly that line, I'm going to come out this way by 1 inch. So I'll make a point right there, and I'm going to use my ruler to make sure that these 2 points connect. So I'll move over to my chest line, the line labeled my chest line, and I'll divide my bust circumference of 36 inches into 4, and what I had there was 9 inches. I went ahead to place it on my chest line and made a point right there with my pencil. So I'm going to use my curve rule now to create an armhole, making sure that it stops on exactly that 9 inches I marked on my chest line. So I hope you're understanding everything I'm doing right here. having done that, now I will divide my waist circumference into 4. I went ahead to mark what I got there on my half length. So I'm going to connect all the way from my chest line into my half length to my basque area in a straight way like this. So the next I'm going to do now is to replace this my dart. So I'm going to measure out what I have under my dart, and of course is 1 inch, because half inch at both sides will end up giving us 1 inch. So there is a way I normally replace my dart. I replace my dart from exactly the way the dart was taken. So this is to avoid excess allowance, or at the end of the day you end up seeing that your dress is too big on you or something. But if you should replace your dart from exactly the part it was taken, you're going to have your dress fitted on you. So the next, I'm going to move over to the newly created neckline. So on exactly that line, I'm going to divide what I have right there into 2. So right there I have 6 inches. I divided this into 2 equal halves and I marked the middle. So from that middle, I'm going to extend it down a bit, slightly a bit. So the next I'm going to do is to come to the center front of this my paper, and I'm going to come down by at least 2 inches. So from that point right there, I'm going to come down by 2 inches, and on the middle of this my neckline, I went ahead to mark 1 inch. So all I'm simply going to do right here is to create a curve to connect this point from my center front all the way to the middle of this my neckline. So I wasn't really good at using my free hand to do this. I had to opt to use my ruler. So you can see the part I use right here. So if you have a ruler that is perfectly curved more than mine, that's okay. And if you want your curve more pronounced, you can go deeper than what I marked right here. But for me, this was just the perfect thing I wanted. So I curved the first middle point to the center of my neckline, and from that part I will now connect it in a curvy manner as well to the other side of my neckline. So watch carefully everything I'm doing right here and you definitely understand. So after I did this again with my free hand, I cleaned it and proceeded to use my curve rule to achieve the perfect curvy effect I want on my neckline. So guys, here it is, and you can see how beautiful this is already looking, right? So I went ahead to smoothen this more, and after that, this is what I have. So I'm going to come down by just half of an inch from my half length. So on exactly that point, you see where I marked my dart, that is where I came down by half of an inch, and I zoomed it in for you to have a better view. So from the exact measurement I have, I'm going to create my curve. Right from the point where I marked my exact measurement, I will create this curve. So you might be wondering that I didn't add any stitching or sewing allowance to this. Yes, that is because from the beginning of this tutorial, I already told you I'm working with a stretchy fabric, very stretchy fabric. So that was why I didn't add any stitching allowance to this. So I created my basque curve, but at this point my camera really misbehaved, but I went ahead to explain exactly what I did because at this point it wasn't too late. So after creating my curve from my actual measurements, I actually showed you what you do if you want to add a stitching or joining allowance to this in case you're working with a non-stretchy fabric. So because I wasn't working with a non-stretchy fabric, I had to cancel that out. And for the upper part, which is the neckline area, I cut off the shaded parts, and from the curve I made right there on my neckline, I went ahead to follow that shape and cut out, and that was basically all I did, and I believe it's not confusing at all. So the next step is to cut out my darts. So watch carefully so you see the parts where I'm cutting out, so you don't make any mistakes while doing yours, because this dress is definitely something you want to try out because it came out super beautiful. Okay, so just watch carefully, and after cutting this out, I'll move over to the curve part and I'll cut this out and finish up the sides and the armhole for the side front, which I'll still go ahead to label later on. after cutting this out, this is what I have. Cut out the back square for the front, for the center front, and this is what I have. And I'll simply use my marker to label this, my center front and my side front as well. So I am going to just open up the center front for you all to see the curvy effect at the neckline area, and I'll go ahead now to slash it into two. So after all of that, I brought all these pieces together, and you can see what I have right here. So the next, I'll move over to draft out the back part of this blouse. So I already have my paper folded into two as well, and I went ahead to mark a line at the top of my paper, and that is going to be my shoulder line. So normally for the back, for your back dress, ½ inch is usually marked for your zipper, but me, I'm not going to add any ½ inch for any zipper allowance because I am also working with a stretchy fabric. So I'll skip that, and what I'm going to do now is to place my neck depth above that line, exactly on that line. That's my 5 inches. I kept it right there, and I went ahead to mark my bust point of 10 inches, my half length of 17 inches plus ½ inch, which is serve as the hemming allowance. So right there on that first line on my paper, which is my shoulder line, I marked my shoulder of 6 inches. So taking my 5 inches, which is my neck depth above that line, I went ahead to mark my armhole length of 8 inches. So I went ahead now to extend those lines a bit, just this way. So on that line, which is my chest line, I'm going to divide my bust circumference into 4, and what I had, I marked it right there. So I extended this line to meet that point I made there. So the next I'll go do is to label this my bust point and also my half length, so you don't get confused. So I'm going to divide my nipple to nipple point of 7 inches into 2. I went ahead to repeat the same thing by marking 3½ inches on this line. So using my ruler as well, I'll go ahead now to connect these points. So after that, I'll also go up and come down by half inch on my bust point line, just as I did for the front part. So I'm typically repeating almost everything I did for the front, aside the basque effect I created and a bit alteration on the princess dart on the armhole. So that's just it, but for the darts on the waist is the same thing. So after creating my waist dart, I'm going ahead as well to also create my princess dart from the armhole. So from that point, I'm going to connect all the way into this ½ inch I came up by from my bust point. So after creating the first curve, I'll measure out like ½ inch instead of 1 inch, which I did for the front. For the back, you measure out ½ inch from the first curve created, and you also connect to that point. So when I did this, I realized that the first curve I made wasn't really looking nice at all. It was out of shape. I cleaned this and I retraced this. So it's a sine qua non that your drafting must be accurate, else you end up regretting everything you've seen. So take your time and do your drafting and have a perfect finishing. So that aside, now I'm simply going to recreate the same neckline I did for the front. I'm going to do the same thing for the back. So I marked the half of this my neckline, and for the center back, I'm going to come down by 2 inches because I wanted this a bit deeper than that of the front. Okay, so I'll just repeat the same thing I did for the creation of the front neckline. Okay. I believe that you understood everything I did here perfectly. So after the creation of these curves on this neckline, I divided my waist circumference by 4, and I marked what I had on my half length or my waistline. So I'm going to connect this together, and once I did this, I'll go ahead and replace my darting tape. So like I said, I always replace my dart from exactly where it was taken, so that it doesn't end up having so much allowance at the sides of your dress. if you've actually noticed, you understand what I mean. So after that, now I'm going ahead now to create my armhole, because I'm here to create an armhole for this my back piece. So I went ahead to come out by 1 inch from this already created princess dart and connected this way, and I'll create a curve to meet that point right there on my chest line. So that's the creation of my armhole. So I'm done now. The next I'm going to do is to cut this out the way it's looking. So I'll repeat again, I'm not adding any stitching allowance because my fabric is very stretchy. But if yours is slightly stretchy, you can proceed to add about 1/2 inch to 3/4. I wouldn't advise for you to add 1 inch as your joining allowance. On most cases, if yours is all this lycra fabric that extremely stretchy, most times you even subtract 1/2 inch or 1 inch from your actual measurement. So if you've never tried working with a stretchy fabric, this is a sign for you to do so, because variety is the spice of life. So that's by the way. So from this already drafted back piece, I'm going to create my zipper slope. So you can see that I'm marking 1/2 inch, and after this I'll connect this in a straight line using my black. So from the base of this my pattern paper, I'll go up by 5.5 inches, and I'll connect this slightly this way, and I'll cut this out, and the remaining upper part I will slash it open. So guys, this is the drafting of this beautiful top which you see right here, and in the next tutorial I'll be sharing with you all how to go about the joining, to the ironing, and the fixing of the sleeves. So that is all for this tutorial. So do watch out for the second part of this tutorial, which I'll soon be uploading. Till then, see you guys, bye. Please don't also forget to subscribe to my channel. I love you all. Thank you.